Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. Before we get into it, once again, I've had people in the comments tell me that they're getting unsubscribed by YouTube, so do please check you are still subscribed. It's a bugger, I know, I can do nothing about it, but it's just the way. I think YouTube just doesn't like political channels, so do please check that you are still subscribed and hit that bell for notifications. And indeed, if you are yet to subscribe, please take this opportunity to do so. There's a lot of stories coming this year and you won't want to miss them, especially with the run up to the election as well. That'll prove very fruitful, I think. Anyway, we've got this story here. Now, you'll have seen from the thumbnail, we're going to talk about Swinney's secrets. And unfortunately, we're not talking about the one secret I would absolutely love to discuss. But alas, not yet. One day it will come out, but I'm not going to be the one to break it. But there are other secrets, and this particular one is going to show how basically Swinney seems to think higher of the Greens than of his own colleagues within the SNP, and certainly how deals were arranged to ensure that the Greens were kept happy immediately in the aftermath of Nicola Sturgeon's resignation. It is a bit slimy, it's a bit underhand, but then this is the SNP, so what else do we expect? Let's take a look. So, Sturgeon announces her resignation out of the blue, bang, totally unexpected. And the first thing Swinney does is get on the phone and have a conference call with the Greens. Not with his own colleagues, not with his partners in cabinet, not with the members of his party, no. Straight away, bang, the Greens. Because to the SNP, the Greens are all powerful. They are the ones that must be kept on board. And so it goes to show where his priorities lie. Not in the good of the party, not in the good of the country, purely on the good side of the Greens. John Swinney held shadowy, clear-the-air talks with the Greens on the day Nicola Sturgeon stepped down. The then First Deputy Minister held a video call with Patrick Harvey and Lorna Slater and the Green MSPs to discuss the Butte House agreement on the same day Nicola Sturgeon announced her surprise resignation. And at that point, the Greens were sitting there laughing because they knew full well that they had the SNP by the short and curlies. Because whoever came in, if it was anyone other than Humza Yousaf, would have got rid of them. And so the Greens said, you've got to make sure it isn't Kate Forbes or it isn't Ash Regan, because they would have walked with that. Well, they say they would have walked. That said, they haven't walked at any point, given that every policy they've had has failed, and they haven't walked. So, I mean, they say they would have walked, but I don't believe they would. Anyway, further questions are being asked about the Scottish Greens' influence over the SNP, as it can be revealed that John Swinney held a meeting with the party's MSPs on the same day that Nicola Sturgeon announced her resignation, and before he spoke to anyone in his own party. And the Greens do have too much power. They are a tiny, by percentage of the vote, they are so tiny. And yet, in terms of power, they are so massively overrepresented, overwhelmingly powerful for the tiny amount of votes they got. And indeed, I think it's definitely a case that no list MP must ever be given a cabinet position. I think that is deeply, deeply wrong, because you get things like this, where you can get a Marxist party like the Greens given massive amounts of power within Scotland, and yet virtually no one voted for them. 5 times as many people voted for the Liberal Democrats, for example, and yet the Lib Dems only ended up with 4 seats and none in government. Weird, isn't it? Anyway, the meeting to discuss the Butte House agreement was not disclosed at the time, and nor does it appear that SNP ministers, MSPs or MPs were offered any similar sort of formal reassurance about the future of the administration following the shock announcement. So Swinney's concern wasn't with his own MSPs or his own MPs or his own party workers. It was purely, let's make sure that the Greens were happy. And that is his priority. The former First Minister's press conference on the morning of February the 15th, which will be a year ago tomorrow, 2023, took many by complete surprise. Although rumours of her future had been circulating for some time, and I remember doing the videos thinking it can't be long now. And then when it came and we were all like, yay! And then we had the super fun time of the civil war that ensued and the deals that were being cut. Anyway, the day before, the Scottish Daily Express published a spoof resignation letter that turned out to be uncannily accurate, and it was, wasn't it? But it was all there because she knew what was coming. She saw the direction of travel. She knew Operation Branchform would reach out for her. She knew that there would be many, many more things coming. She needed to get away. A press conference at Bute House was organised at short notice, with Miss Sturgeon's senior private secretary sending an email to her communications team at 5:19 on February the 14th, along with her special advisors. The only politicians in the magic circle at that point were Mr Swinney, the then Deputy First Minister, and the SNP Deputy Leader, Keith Brown. I suspect Murrell might have known. They, their little pillow talk. Yeah, right. Anyway, according to correspondence published by the Scottish Government, Scottish Greens co-leaders Patrick Harvey and Lorna Slater were also given special treatment as part of the hastily arranged exit plan. So the Greens were involved, but none of her senior cabinet colleagues. Wow. Arrogance? Much? No wonder the Greens feel they can do what they like. They were formally told of Miss Sturgeon's plans, along with the Cabinet Secretaries, in a phone call from the SPADs 30 minutes before the 11 a.m. press conference. All the other junior ministers were not told about it until they received an email at 10:55, literally minutes before the conference. So you'd tell people in another party before you'd tell your own party members. Wow. Others to be informed in advance, including King Charles, the SNP's Westminster leader Stephen Flynn, and party president Mike Russell. The Welsh First Minister and Key Sturgeon ally Mark Drayford was also called, but Prime Minister Rishi Sunak was not. Now, if that's not a sign of utter contempt, I mean, that is a sign. It's very low. It's very low. Despite you being political opponents, he's still the Prime Minister, and he deserves to know. Even if you don't like him, it's not there. Protocol. And the very fact that you wouldn't do it shows what an embittered, small-minded, tiny, hate-filled blob of amorphous shite Nicola Sturgeon truly is. The SNP's MPs and MSPs were only informed in an email sent at 11 a.m. In other words, the MPs, are just the standard MPs and MSPs, only found out with the rest of the population. When the news conference was called, everyone else knew in advance. By everyone else, I mean senior Greens knew before our own MPs and MSPs. It's crazy, isn't it? Why are the Greens so important? Why are they put on this platform, this plinth, and all praised? They're an obnoxious bunch of Marxist pricks, and yet for some reason the SNP is lionising them, turning them into the messiahs of Scotland. They are awful, they are dangerous, they are stupid. And yet for some reason they cannot walk away. Also on that day, it can now be revealed, Mr Swinney and the SNP's Parliamentary Business Minister George Adam held a video call with the Green Party group to discuss the Bute House agreement. And according to their ministerial diaries, Harvey and Slater were both in on the call. It is not known what is discussed, but within a few days, the Scottish Greens made it clear that they would walk away from the coalition if Kate Forbes or Ash Regan were to win the SNP leadership contest. I said that. Also, they probably wouldn't. They're probably sitting there thinking, yeah, but I like my big salary. I like my $120,000 a year, and I like this and I like that. Well, we'll put up with it. The fact is, if Kate Forbes or Ash Regan, certainly Kate Forbes, I'm not sure about Ash, but if Kate Forbes had have become leader, she would have ditched the Bute House agreement immediately. So they wouldn't have been. Anyway, this boosted Humza Yousaf's chances as the continuity candidate who would ensure Miss Sturgeon's legacy. If she wants her legacy to be one of failure, of lies, of incompetence and of stupidity, then bang, he's done it. 2 days later, Mr Swinney ruled himself out of the leadership race to create the space for a fresh perspective to emerge. What he means is to make sure that everyone knew they had to vote for Humza Yousaf in order to keep the Greens in government. And so basically people weren't voting for Humza Yousaf. They were voting for the Greens. They were voting for the Greens to run the SNP. Isn't that a very strange way to run a political party? The Greens are seen as hugely influential in the Scottish Government, with the prospect of them collapsing the Butte House Agreement and forcing a snap Holyrood election, likely to terrify the SNP leadership given the party's low position in the polls. I would love them to walk away. They won't. But if we can oust Humza Yousaf and Kate Forbes goes in, then they've gone. Either they quit on the day or they're fired that day. It doesn't matter. Either way, by 5 p.m, close of business that day, the Greens are out of government. The Scottish Daily Express has revealed the handful of Green MSPs are more likely to be granted a meeting with the SNP ministers than MSPs from any other party, even their own. And while Harvey and Slater frequently attend cabinet meetings despite their junior status. Scottish Tory MSP Annie Wells told the Scottish Daily Express, "It is clear that the anti-growth Greens hold far too much sway over Humza Yousaf. Far more even than they did under Nicola Sturgeon, because Humza Yousaf is a spineless, ball-bagless Ken doll of a politician who doesn't know how to say no, and these two morons, the Imp and Jeffrey, are taking full advantage of the jellyfish in Butte House." Coming up. To be honest, is anyone really surprised? I mean, we know Swinney is a slimy oleaginous toad. We know he's in it only for what he can get. We know he's a terrible, awful, awful human being who's done some pretty awful, terrible human things to other human beings, allegedly. But when he treats his own party colleagues with such contempt that before his own ministers, his own MPs, his own MSPs are informed of what is happening, he's on the phone having conference calls with the Greens because they think the Greens are more important than their own SNP politicians. It is shameful, but it does show how much power the Greens have when they shouldn't have any at all. These Marxist, dangerous extremists should be thrown out. And if you had a First Minister who actually managed at some point in his childhood to grow a pair, they wouldn't be there today. But alas not. Kendall will keep them there until Kendall is disposed of and Kate is put in. Thank you very much for watching. Do definitely hit that subscribe button. Like I say, for some reason YouTube is being really dodgy with it and it keeps pulling people away. We need to build them back up, spread the channel. So do hit the button. Until next time, stay safe, stay well, and I will speak to you later. Bye.